attending the Canyon City Vineyard. And I think at one point you'd asked me if I wanted to be an elder at the church. And that was hard for me because that would have been my first foray back into ministry. And I had made a personal decision I would never do ministry again. And happily, and that was that vow on my part was already starting to weaken because I saw that it was a beautiful thing. But I told you I didn't think I was qualified because I was struggling with lust, and I wasn't walking in sexual purity, just primarily my thought life and the way I should be. And I remember we had a very frank discussion. We were at I think you wanted to. This got to the point to where we kind of left the elder thing alone for a while, and then the church was looking to hire an associate pastor. And so, and I think at that point, I felt like God was saying it was time to jump back into the race again. And so we had coffee over at Coyote Coffee Den in Florence. Yeah. And we talked fairly directly about sexual purity. And I remember you said something, and it was in connection to the topic of sexual sin, sexual thought life, pornography stuff. And even masturbation. There, it's out there. And we talked about that stuff, and you actually you told me, and this is good in the context of your honesty about being imperfect in this area too. But you told me that there's a certain point when God spoke to you about masturbation and just said, "I want you to stop that," something like that, and you had the grace to obey. And I think at that point you told me that it had been like 10 years previous. And I remember at the time I thought that Cory's not a human being. He's like an android. He's like an alien. He was dropped. I think I even asked you, I said, well, I mean, do you have a full sex drive? And you're like, oh yes. And I mean, the last verse in this passage is honor God with your bodies. And what does that mean to you personally? How does that play out?
Yeah, well, I think of First Thessalonians as well, 4:3-5. There's a little interesting phrase in there that is learn to control your own body. And so what I like there is learn. Like, it doesn't say control your own body right now. It's like, hey, might be a journey for some, and you're going to need to learn and be open to controlling desires, lusts, actions, behaviors that might be not either honoring or helpful. So when you look at masturbation, which is a topic that unfortunately we probably should talk more about, at least in men's groups and women's groups separately or whatever, because I don't know what the percentage of humans that are engaged in that activity post 18 to 75 years old, but the percentage is high. And people will ask me all the time, do I think it's a sin? And I again go back and say, let's not talk about the behavior right now. Let's talk about the heart and the mind. And if you could I might have even told other people, you've probably heard me say this, Alex, is that if you can do that behavior with zero lust in your mind and heart, well, maybe. However, I have never met or experienced a time where that was done in a way that did not have lust in it, either as a mind visualization or a heart or whatever. Now, this is what I'm talking about, self-gratification.
Yeah.
So I'm less thinking about the behavior, and I'm more thinking about what's in the heart and what's in the mind when people do certain types of sexual activities. And I have experienced other people that have taken quite a process to be free of that activity. And I have experienced situations in which people own, different types of grace where they have stopped and taken that away immediately. And that gives people hope. I think as you think about pornography, Dallas Willard talks about what a state the soul is in for a man or woman to be engaged in pornography. And, I don't know if I know a guy that hasn't had that in their life. Mm-hmm. Like, it might be 100% of the men I know have at some point at least looked at something. It's obviously not healthy. It is a journey. And when we had talked about in that past, the key is being open about that journey with someone that you trust, that you're working on that issue, you're getting the help you need. There's grace for that. But when it turns to private, that's when the devil comes in with shame.
Yeah, that's good.
And so that's when it can start getting really ugly and hurtful and destroy marriages and so on and so forth. So
yeah,
I don't know if there's any, I don't even know if I answered your question in that, but
yeah,
you'll have to kind of process that.
I don't remember my question, so I think we're okay. I remember Willard talking about that for those of us when we're lusting after women as males, that you have to lower your appraisal and appreciation and value for women as human beings in order to do that. And so just to get to that, like you said, the state of your soul means you're willing to view people as commodities as opposed to as beautiful people made in God's image. And of course that is a problem that goes across the board.
Yeah.
That's good. It's interesting to me that, of course, the Bible talks about sex a lot. It sometimes in narrative form, like you're talking about, often the result of bad sexual decisions and the fruit of that. It's interesting to me that only one of the 10 commandments of the Big Ten addresses this issue directly. Almost like if it's important to God, it's maybe no more than 10% important. Particularly, you look at the first couple of ones, especially, or if you compare it to murder or stealing, those types of things. It's interesting. Sometimes we are hung up on that. It seems like we're going either too far one way or too far the other way. And I like what you said, that's a good passage in Thessalonians that learn the whole process of it.